Captain America is one of the leading lights of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the late 1970s, a pair of telemovies attempted to bring the character to television and turned out about as well as trying to use a cactus as a cheap substitute for Velcro. We're looking at the 1979 telemovies Captain America and Captain America 2, Death Too Soon. Captain America was a popular comic character in the 1940s and was one of the earliest superheroes to receive a live-action version in the form of a serial. But the comic, like the title character, would spend long periods in hibernation, like a really unpopular bear with bad BO and restricted access to deodorant.
Mr. Brackett, you're supposed to put the dust-free gown on before you come into the room?
I know, Lester. I'm sorry.
Captain America would be relaunched every now and then, but it would take some time for him to become one of Marvel's most popular characters. In the 70s, live-action superhero series had become more common, either showing up as cheap Saturday morning fare, but also occasionally as prime-time network series. Superhero movies and series might seem ubiquitous now, but they were very popular in the 70s, with some adapted from comics, others from books, and others still created specifically for TV. DC had already seen a number of its characters making the leap to live action over the decades: Superman, Batman, Shazam, and Wonder Woman. And it was pretty natural that Marvel would want to horn in on some of that sweet Nielsen action. Their first attempt was a short-lived Spider-Man series starring Nicholas Hammond. More successful was Kenneth Johnson's adaptation of The Incredible Hulk, which eventually ran for 5 seasons. There was also a 1978 version of Doctor Strange that never got past a single movie. But in 1979, a pair of made-for-TV movies detailed the exploits of Steve Rogers. This is sort of, but not quite, but really is the same Steve Rogers, reimagined for a time when flared trousers and Vans were all the rage. Captain America, broadcast by CBS in January '79, details the transformation of a former Marine turned travelling van life artist Steve Rogers, where he gets involved in reviving his late father's work in creating a super steroid known as Flag.
Full latent ability gain.
Which seems to give rats superpowers, but burns them out faster than trying to power a Tesla from a single AAA battery. Steve Rogers here is pretty chill and doesn't want to be involved, but at the same time becomes suspicious that several attempts to kill him may not have been accidents. But Dr. Simon Mills believes he's close to getting the formula right, but without Steve's help, he's up shit creek without a paddle. He's burned through so many rats in trying to get the formula right that 40% of local pest exterminators have gone out of business.
It hasn't been a bad life. Lots of times I feel pretty good in here.
When Steve is critically injured and near death, Dr. Mills just ups and gives Steve the steroids.
He's gonna die anyway, don't you understand?
Which Steve isn't super happy about since he has no idea if it will kill him prematurely.
It's okay. I understand. But it's over.
If some of this sounds a bit like the early episodes of The $6 Million Man, then you're in good company. Steve, Rogers not Austin, now has super strength and enhanced senses, though his abilities are organic in nature rather than mechanical. And, of course, they're accompanied by a sound effect. In fact, this version of Captain America does seem like it's been heavily influenced by the antics of the other Steve. Steve, that's Rogers not Austin, has a bulletproof shield. Okay, it looks like a plexiglass lampshade, but he also has a sweet RV kitted out with all manner of gadgets and deep shag pile carpet. Steve Rogers' shaggin' wagon gives him a mobile base out of which he can operate as the vigilante Captain America. In this version of the character's origins, Rogers' dad, having initially developed the steroid, had also worked as a crime fighter and been given by crooks a mocking nickname.
They ridiculed your father, remember? Called him Captain America and finally murdered him. Be Captain America, Steve. Jam Captain America down their throats.
As Steve, that's Rogers not Austin, tests his newfound abilities, he wears a costume inspired by one of his sketches, but by the end, he wants to operate as Captain America exactly as his father had, including wearing the same costume. Look, it's very easy to look at this costume and laugh. Next time you see people complaining that superhero movie costumes don't look like the comic book originals, Reb Brown's bright blue spandex suit is a good example to cite when you want to explain why. Reb Brown has the physique and the look. If you think of a late 1970s Captain America, this is what he would look like. Despite the fact he looks exactly the same before and after the flag steroid. Steve Rogers comes off as a laid-back surfer dude, but a blonde surfer rather than a silver surfer, since I don't think anyone really wants to see Silver Surfer done on a 70s TV budget. As an actor, Brown doesn't really have much of a range, at least in terms of his vocal delivery, especially in this first movie. He had been acting for a few years, so he did have experience by the time this was made, but he's easily outclassed by the rest of the cast, who do seem to be carrying Brown in many of the heavier going scenes.
Captain America.
Captain America?
Reb Brown is likeable enough, and his interpretation of Steve Rogers is pretty chill.
Yeah.
If you needed to cool down a can of beer and there's no fridge nearby, just hand it to Steve Rogers for 5 minutes and his chill will refrigerate your drink nicely.
A friend of mine has some heavy problems right now and needs my help.
Len Berman as Dr. Mills has a lot of exposition to get through, and there's a lot to explain. I mean, he should be called Dr. Exposition, and he would either be the very best or the very worst dinner party guest.
I felt that the flag serum would give you that one chance, a chance for your body to use its full, latent recuperative powers.
Heather Menzies had been seen in the short-lived Logan's Run TV series. He appears in this first movie as Dr. Wendy Day.
Look, you've been run off the road, you've been blown up, you've been kidnapped. Maybe you ought to get the message.
Steve Forrest is a villain who, for whatever reasons, wants to set off a neutron bomb. I mean, if you have a neutron bomb, it would be rude not to set it off.
You mean he was a super crime fighter?
In one sense, I suppose you could call him that, yes.
And now you want me to take his place?
No one else can. It's bulletproof and a rather deadly weapon.
A second movie followed later in 1979, but was sometimes screened as 2 one-hour episodes. Captain America 2: Death Too Soon. Cap has been roaming the country in his van, flirting with old ladies who he paints like his French women. A new threat emerges. The terrorist Miguel wants to extort $1 billion out of the government, otherwise he will release a chemical that will promote rapid aging. Steve Rogers follows the trail to a small town that may have been used as a testbed, and the locals are rather hostile towards Steve and his portrait of a cat.
What are you doing?
Painting?
Yeah, but why here?
This is where the cat is.
Meanwhile, Dr. Mills and Dr. Wendy Day, now played by Connie Seliker, are trying to work on an antidote before Portland, Oregon is aged up like a sitcom baby, suddenly having their 8th birthday during their 2nd season.
Thinking about staying a few days and checking into the boarding house.
Well, there's not much in this town to interest a stranger. I suggest you try Greenwood. Much more to see.
Greenwood's a dump.
Miguel is operating out of a prison, which is ironic since some of the acting here is close to criminal. Christopher Lee, yes, that Christopher motherfucking Lee is Miguel, and he's not, as you might expect, the best thing in this.
Who in the world would think of looking for the famous terrorist Miguel inside an American penitentiary?
Lee seems to have been handed a script where he was given some incredibly rank dialogue. I once noticed a terrible smell in my garage, and I thought it was a dead mouse, and it took weeks of searching before I discovered it was a piece of steak that I'd left in a shopping bag. I mean, that smell was utterly sickening. While watching Lee struggle to overcome his cheesy dialogue, all I could smell was that rotting meat.
Well, let's make sure this time. You go to the lab and you get the professor to give the biggest dogs an overdose of the aging compound, and then you let them loose in the corridor.
A showdown between Reb Brown and Christopher Lee doesn't necessarily go the way you think it would.
It's a shame, really, because in any other circumstances, we might have been friends.
I doubt that, General.
Brown seems to have improved somewhat, being a little more comfortable in the role. He's a very empathetic Steve Rogers, everyone's kindly big brother. Just one who happens to be built like a brick shithouse, especially if you selected the extra large brick shithouse option from the brick shithouse catalogue. He's not by any stretch a great actor, but in this second film he at least seems to have a better grip on the character. Both movies seem to have overly complicated plots that required lots of awkward explanations, like when your folks find your OnlyFans page.
I don't like this.
But plots aside, what we see on screen is a fairly standard action-adventure show. The second movie, freed from having to set up Captain America, does feature a lot more action scenes and gags around Steve Rogers' powers, and a lot more of the bike. You can almost forget the chintzy plastic shield they've given him. It seems to serve mainly as a windshield for the bike, covered in splattered bugs. The second movie features Cap and his bike gliding through the air. Somebody thought that probably sounded really cool on paper, but in the movie it looks just this side of awkward. I think the best way to describe these movies is mostly ordinary. They have some entertainment value, especially the fun action scenes. I mean, I particularly like the bike. But the flying plastic shield, it looks really silly. I mean, I initially thought someone had lost their umbrella in a high wind. There'll certainly be comments from people who remembered seeing these back in the day, but while I generally have a pretty decent feel for what shows lurk in various archives, these ones crept up on me like a ninja missionary. When I discovered these existed, I was legit shook, as cooler seismologists might say. Sometimes you look at a pilot or a short-run series and think, that's a shame that they didn't do more of these. In this case, I'm actually okay with there just being these two, because they aren't much more than a curiosity. There's just not enough of the spark that makes you feel that they were on the right path. Mike Post and Pete Carpenter provided the music, the pair having already created themes to The Rockford Files and would go on to create some of the most memorable TV tunes of the 80s with shows like Magnum P.I. and The A-Team. Only 2 Captain America films were made, ostensibly as pilots for a series that didn't go ahead. Reb Brown would later appear as the title character, Yor, the Hunter from the Future. There would be another attempt at a live-action Captain America in 1990, but it would be another couple of decades before Captain America would break out of Marvel's B-tier character prison and become one of the most popular superheroes. I wasn't expecting a hidden gem or a sleeper, but they were fun enough. Worth me watching once, but realistically only once. I can't honestly suggest everyone go out of their way to see these, unless you really want to see absolutely every Marvel series or movie ever made. Looking at these two movies, not with the veil of nostalgia, but with fresh eyes, you quickly realize it's less Captain America, more Captain Mediocre. Well, if first you don't succeed, try again. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.